The jewelry store sparkled with light, every corner gleaming with wealth and power. In the center, a rich woman's voice cut through the calm as she sneered at an elderly black woman standing with quiet grace. She mocked her, saying her presence cheapened the place, and demanded security remove her immediately. Shoppers stared, some whispering, others pretending not to see. The elderly woman lowered her eyes but did not flinch, her dignity unshaken. What no one knew was that she was the true owner of this store. And from the corner, a man watched silently. Chuck Norris. If you saw this injustice, would you have spoken up or stayed silent? The jewelry store glowed with polished marble floors, golden chandeliers, and glass cases that held treasures worth fortunes. Wealthy customers moved through the aisles, their voices soft, their movements elegant. In the midst of them walked an elderly black woman, her posture straight, her steps calm. She wore simple but graceful clothes, her hands steady as she greeted the staff with warmth. A few smiled back, knowing who she truly was, while others, unaware, assumed she was just another shopper. Across the room stood a rich woman, draped in designer clothes, every jewel on her body screaming entitlement. Her eyes scanned the room with superiority, as if nothing and no one could match her presence. She adjusted her diamond necklace, her expression set in disdain. At the same moment, a man entered quietly. Chuck Norris moved without fanfare, blending in with the shoppers, his sharp eyes catching every detail. He walked slowly, studying the atmosphere, watching interactions unfold with patience. For a while, the store hummed with the normal rhythm of luxury shopping. Staff guided customers, laughter mixed with the soft clinking of jewelry being displayed, and wealth seemed to flow through the air. But that balance was about to break. The rich woman's arrogance stirred, and with it came the spark of conflict that would change everything. The calm rhythm of the jewelry store shifted when the rich woman fixed her eyes on the elderly black lady. Her voice cut through the soft hum of shoppers, sharp and cruel. She declared loudly that the woman did not belong in such a place. Her words carried venom, designed to humiliate. Staff froze, their smiles faltering. Some looked toward the elderly woman with discomfort, torn between protecting her and serving the rich woman's money. The elderly woman, standing with quiet dignity, did not let her expression change. She held her ground, her voice measured, as she politely ignored the insults hurled at her. Her silence was not weakness, it was control. But the rich woman could not stand that calm. Her arrogance flared hotter. She raised her voice, calling for security, demanding they remove the woman from the store. Her shouts echoed against the glass cases, filling the air with tension. Customers nearby shifted uncomfortably, glancing at one another but quickly looking away. No one wanted to challenge wealth and power. No one dared to interfere. The elderly woman stood alone, her dignity clashing with the storm of arrogance thrown at her. And in the corner, Chuck Norris watched, his calm face tightening, his eyes narrowed with recognition. He knew something no one else did. The arrogance on display was about to meet a truth that would change the entire room. The tension thickened as two security guards moved toward the elderly woman. Their posture was firm, rehearsed, the kind meant to intimidate without words. One of them gestured toward the exit, telling her it would be better if she left quietly. The store grew silent, the soft chime of the glass doors the only sound breaking the stillness. The rich woman leaned back slightly, arms crossed, a smug smirk stretching across her face. She had already decided the outcome in her mind. Her confidence radiated, the kind born from money and entitlement. To her, this was a victory, proof that her status was untouchable. The elderly woman raised her head and spoke, her tone calm and measured. She asked one simple question: why must she leave? There was no anger in her words, only clarity, as if she were exposing something deeper with her restraint. The staff shifted uneasily, realizing the ugliness of what was happening, but none stepped forward to intervene. The arrogance escalated. The rich woman stepped closer, her voice dripping with superiority. She declared that she owned the place with her money, that people like the elderly woman should know their limits. Her words echoed across the store, designed to humiliate and solidify her power. Through it all, Chuck Norris remained still, his gaze fixed on the unfolding scene. He had said nothing yet, but his silence was not weakness, it was calculation. His eyes narrowed, reading every detail, every word, every gesture. The elderly woman did not shrink. Her presence carried a quiet authority, something unspoken that unsettled those watching. She stood as if she belonged more than anyone else in the room. What happens when truth replaces arrogance? The rich woman's voice rose higher, sharp and cutting, as she hurled insults across the polished floor of the store. She called the elderly woman names, accusing her of being out of place, insisting that someone like her did not deserve to walk among fine jewelry and expensive displays. Every word dripped with venom, and her tone grew more commanding with each insult. The security guards hesitated, their discomfort visible, yet the pressure was clear. They inched closer, their hands twitching as though preparing to gently but firmly escort the elderly woman toward the door. The rich woman watched with delight, her smile stretching wider as if victory was already hers. Chuck Norris shifted slightly 1 foot forward, his presence subtle but undeniable. His eyes locked on the scene, steady and unblinking, carrying a weight the room could not yet measure. Though he held back, it was clear he was no ordinary bystander. His silence was sharper than words, his body tense, waiting. The elderly woman remained still. Her patience had been stretched thin, yet her silence carried power. It was not the silence of defeat but of certainty, a calmness that stood taller than the insults thrown at her. Each moment she refused to break made the rich woman's arrogance appear smaller. Around them, whispers began to ripple through the store. Customers exchanged uneasy glances, their voices low, their discomfort impossible to ignore. Some shifted their weight, torn between leaving and staying, as if they sensed something beyond an ordinary confrontation was about to happen. The tension grew unbearable, the kind that thickened the air and slowed every heartbeat. The rich woman laughed, a sound that rang hollow, filled with the arrogance of someone who believed she had already won. But what she did not know was simple, chilling, and inevitable. The game was already over. The moment the security guards reached out, the elderly woman finally lifted her head. Her voice, calm yet commanding, cut through the room with absolute clarity. "You dare to throw the owner of this store out of her own shop." The words landed like thunder. For a moment, silence consumed the jewelry store. The staff froze mid-step, their hands suspended in the air. The security guards stopped cold, glancing at each other in disbelief. The polished world of diamonds and gold suddenly felt small, shrinking under the weight of truth. The rich woman's confidence shattered instantly. Her face drained of color, her lips trembling as she tried to form words. She stammered, shaking her head as though refusing to believe what had just been revealed. The arrogance that had carried her was gone, replaced by panic. Then, a figure stepped forward. Chuck Norris moved to stand beside the elderly woman, his presence commanding silence without effort. His gaze swept the room, firm and unyielding. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of authority. He confirmed the truth, telling everyone that this woman was not only the rightful owner of the store, but also someone who had carried herself with more grace and dignity than anyone else in the room. His words struck like steel, calling out the arrogance and disrespect that had poisoned the air. The atmosphere shifted in an instant. The whispers of the crowd became sharp gasps and quiet murmurs against the rich woman. Eyes that once avoided the conflict now turned fully toward her, judging, condemning. Her smirk was gone, and in its place was the unmistakable fear of being unmasked in front of everyone. What happens when arrogance is stripped away for all to see? The answer was about to unfold before their eyes. Chuck Norris stood firm, his eyes steady as he delivered words that cut deeper than any blade. He reminded everyone that dignity is not a privilege of wealth, but a right deserved by every human being. He spoke of respect, of humility, of the simple truth that arrogance always collapses under its own weight. The room, once tense with silence, now listened with absolute attention. The elderly woman, no longer silent, turned her gaze toward the guards who had been moments away from escorting her out. Her voice was calm yet unwavering. "Remove her instead." She pointed toward the rich woman, whose face twisted in shock. Gasps filled the store, echoing like a wave through the polished aisles of jewels and glass. The guards hesitated only a second, then obeyed. They stepped to the rich woman's side, no longer defenders of her arrogance but enforcers of justice. The rich woman's protests rang out, desperate and shrill. She demanded to be respected. She claimed her money gave her power, yet her words meant nothing. The image of her being escorted out was her final undoing. Customers and staff alike watched, not with pity but with relief. Chuck Norris's voice followed her departure, calm but sharp. Money never buys class, respect does. His words carried through the air, striking everyone in the room with undeniable truth. For a moment, silence hung, and then it broke. Applause erupted. Customers clapped, some cheering quietly, others nodding in agreement. The staff gathered around the elderly owner, their faces no longer hesitant but proud. The store that had been filled with tension now felt alive with justice. The balance had shifted. Arrogance had been crushed in front of everyone, and in its place stood respect, dignity, and the quiet but undeniable strength of the woman who owned it all. The store slowly returned to calm, but it was not the same silence as before. It felt lighter, freer, as though a weight had been lifted from everyone inside. The elderly woman turned to Chuck Norris, her eyes soft with gratitude. She whispered her thanks, but he only nodded humbly, stepping back into quiet dignity, never seeking the spotlight. Customers looked at her with new eyes. What moments ago seemed like weakness now shone as strength. Respect rippled through the room, whispered from one person to another, until it filled the space with undeniable truth. Staff members stood straighter, proud to serve under a woman whose authority was built not on wealth, but on character. The downfall of the rich woman lingered as a reminder to all who had witnessed it. Prejudice always destroys itself, no matter how loudly it pretends to rule. Her arrogance had collapsed, and in its place, dignity stood tall. True authority was revealed, not in gold or money, but in quiet strength, in respect earned, not demanded. Justice was served, but if you were the store owner, would you have forgiven her or not?